Have you ever heard a story so outrageous, so cruel, yet so powerful, that it shook an entire community to its core? Well, this is one of those stories. It begins with an ordinary elderly black man, a quiet street, and a routine stop. But what happened next? It left the nation speechless. But before we dive in, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments, and if you love powerful stories that demand justice and spark change, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. We've got stories that matter, real stories, unforgettable stories. The sun had just started rising over the small town of Brooksville, Mississippi. The streets were quiet, with only a few people out for early morning walks or prepping for the farmer's market that opened at 8. On Elm Street, 72-year-old Walter Jenkins slowly rolled his cart of fresh okra, tomatoes, and collard greens down to his usual spot. Everyone knew Mr. Jenkins. He was kind, he was gentle, and he never raised his voice, even when folks bargained too hard or forgot to pay on time. But on this particular Thursday, evil had no interest in kindness. Officer Brandon Cade had been circling Elm Street for nearly 10 minutes in his cruiser. He was new in town, transferred from a neighboring county after an internal complaint mysteriously disappeared. Brandon wasn't here to serve the community, he was here to control it. And Walter Jenkins, a quiet, elderly black man with a limp and faded overalls, became his target. As Walter laid out his vegetables, humming to an old Sam Cooke tune, Brandon parked his patrol car just feet away. He stepped out slowly, sunglasses on, swaggering like he owned the town. "License to sell," Brandon barked, his voice slicing through the calm. Walter looked up, confused. "Sir, I said, do you have a license to sell these goods?" Brandon repeated, louder this time. Walter blinked. "Sir, I've been selling here for 20 years. Everyone knows me. The mayor even buys from me sometimes." Brandon stepped closer. "Well, I don't know you, and this looks illegal to me." Several shop owners across the street paused, watching the tension unfold. A woman pulled out her phone, just in case. Brandon noticed. "You recording me, ma'am?" he snapped, pointing at her. No, she lied, though the red dot blinking betrayed her. Brandon turned back to Walter. "I'm giving you one chance to pack this up and leave, or things will get messy." Walter stood his ground. "Officer, please, let's not do this. I'm just trying to make a living. You can talk to the mayor if you want." Brandon's eyes narrowed. That was the wrong answer. With a swift motion, Brandon grabbed the front of Walter's shirt, pulling him forward. "Are you resisting, old man? Let go of me," Walter gasped, struggling against the sudden aggression. That's when it happened. In one horrifying move, Brandon reached into his duty belt, pulled out a tactical knife, and slashed across Walter's chest. Fast, brutal, and unexpected. Screams erupted from bystanders. Walter collapsed to the ground, blood soaking his shirt and pooling onto the pavement. His vegetables rolled off the table, crushed under his weight. The woman with the phone dropped it in shock, then picked it up again, now clearly filming. Another young man sprinted toward Walter, shouting, "Call an ambulance, he's bleeding out." But Brandon didn't flinch. He stepped back, chest heaving, eyes wild. Then, as if realizing what he'd done, he reached for his radio. "This is Officer Cade requesting medical assistance. Suspect attacked me. I had to defend myself. Repeat, suspect is down." "Suspect," someone yelled. "He's a 72-year-old man." The chaos exploded. People were shouting, recording, dialing 911. A nurse from the nearby pharmacy rushed over and kneeled beside Walter, pressing gauze from her purse onto his chest, whispering, "Stay with me, sir, stay with me." Walter's eyes fluttered. Tell my son, what's his name?" she asked, her hands trembling but steady. He barely managed. "Isaiah Jenkins." Meanwhile, Brandon backed away, but his expression wasn't fear. It was calculation. He scanned the crowd. He knew he messed up, but he believed, like before, the system would protect him. But there was one thing he didn't know. Walter Jenkins wasn't just a kind farmer. His son Isaiah wasn't just any man. Isaiah Jenkins was a highly decorated U.S. Army Special Operations officer, and he was already on his way to town. His father had just called him 10 minutes earlier to say good morning, and Isaiah had told him, "I'll stop by after breakfast." That breakfast would never happen, but something else was about to begin. Something that would flip the town upside down, and Officer Brandon Cade had no idea who he had just messed with. Isaiah Jenkins's boots hit the gas pedal harder as his black pickup truck sped through the outskirts of Brooksville. His hands clenched the steering wheel, knuckles white, and his heart hammered in his chest. He'd only been off the phone with his father for 15 minutes when the text came in. "Walter Jenkins attacked, stabbed, police involved, come quick." No explanation, no details, Just a blurry photo of Walter lying in a pool of blood outside the farmer's market, his table overturned, vegetables crushed, and a crowd forming in the background. Isaiah's jaw locked. He wasn't just a military man. He was trained in counter-surveillance, urban warfare, and hostage recovery. He had served 4 tours, led Black Ops missions in hostile territories, and commanded men who feared nothing. But nothing prepared him for seeing his gentle, God-fearing father bleeding in the street like an animal. As he crossed Jefferson Avenue, he could already hear sirens wailing from the direction of Elm Street. His father's last words replayed in his mind. "Stop by after breakfast." Isaiah cursed under his breath and floored the pedal. At the scene, Brandon Cade stood tall and smug, flanked by 2 officers who had just arrived. He was recounting his version of the story with disturbing calmness. "He lunged at me. I feared for my safety." Brandon lied smoothly, gesturing to a small scratch on his arm that he had inflicted on himself minutes earlier. "I followed protocol." One officer looked unconvinced. The other kept glancing nervously at the growing number of civilians filming them from behind barricades. The ambulance had already loaded Walter onto a stretcher. His face was pale, his breathing shallow, but he was alive, barely. EMTs worked furiously to stabilize him as the gurney rolled into the vehicle. Then Isaiah's truck pulled up. He didn't slam the door. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He walked slowly, precisely, his boots heavy on the asphalt. The crowd went quiet. A few whispered his name. "Isn't that Jenkins' boy? Isaiah, military guy, right?" Brandon turned at the sound of the approaching footsteps. He saw a tall, muscular black man in a gray hoodie, dark jeans, and a serious stare that could freeze fire. Isaiah's presence shifted the air like a storm was about to break. "You the son?" Brandon called out. Isaiah didn't answer. "Listen, your father assaulted a police officer." Isaiah's hands shot up, signaling silence. Not aggressively, not angrily, just final. Brandon blinked. For a moment his bravado wavered. Isaiah walked up to the ambulance, leaned in and gripped his father's hand. "Pop, it's me. I'm here." Walter's lips trembled, barely able to move. "Zaya, he did it, for no reason." Isaiah's expression didn't change. He nodded. "Don't worry. Rest now." As the ambulance doors closed, Isaiah stood in silence. His eyes lifted slowly to Brandon. That was the first time the officer saw it. Rage. Not loud, not wild, but deep, controlled, dangerous. Isaiah turned to the 2 other officers. "What's his badge number?" They hesitated. Brandon interjected. "Hey, you can't just come in here throwing your weight around." "I said," Isaiah repeated calmly, eyes still locked on the officers. "What is his badge number?" The officer on the left, an older black man named Sergeant Turner, stepped forward and answered, "Badge 0417. Isaiah nodded. "Thank you." He pulled out his phone and tapped into a secure military contact app. Within seconds, he was on a call. "This is Jenkins. I need a federal civil rights observer in Brooksville, immediately. Police assault. Elderly victim. I'm sending the footage now." Brandon stepped forward, voice rising. "You threatening me?" Isaiah didn't look at him. He was still uploading the video footage the crowd had recorded and sent him minutes ago. "I don't need to threaten you," he said flatly. "I just need to tell the truth." Suddenly, one of the civilians, a high school teacher named Carla, stepped forward, holding up her phone. "I got everything," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "From when he yelled at Mr. Jenkins to the moment he pulled that knife. No warning, no attack, just straight-up brutality." Brandon's face turned red. "Ma'am, you're interfering with a police investigation." "No," Sergeant Turner cut in. "She's a witness, and she's exercising her rights." Isaiah looked around. "You all saw what happened?" he asked. Heads nodded, phones lifted, voices rose. "Yes, sir. He slashed that man for no reason. Your father didn't do a damn thing." That's when Isaiah noticed something else. Across the street, a local journalist had arrived with a camera crew, and they were already live. Brandon started to sweat. "Sir," the younger officer mumbled to Brandon, "maybe we should wait for the chief." Isaiah's eyes narrowed. "Don't bother." He turned back toward his truck but didn't leave. He stood still, watching, listening, calculating, and as Brandon tried to explain himself to the crowd, Isaiah quietly sent one more message, this time to a legal team in D.C. he'd worked with during military tribunals. The storm wasn't over. It was just gathering. By nightfall, Brooksville was a town on edge. The video of Walter Jenkins being slashed by Officer Brandon Cade had gone viral, shared over 200,000 times on social media in under 6 hours. The footage, taken from multiple phones, showed the elderly man stumbling backward, blood soaking his shirt, as Brandon stood over him, knife in hand. The crowd's screams, the gasps, the horror, it was undeniable. Isaiah sat inside his father's now empty home, staring at his laptop screen. News outlets were scrambling for interviews. Civil rights groups were sending representatives. But Isaiah wasn't interested in media. He wanted justice, real justice. He wasn't going to fight this battle with noise. He was going to fight it with strategy. On the table before him sat a black case, military issued. Inside, classified files, audio devices, and encrypted gear he had used on missions overseas. He pulled out a small flash drive. It contained a personal recording, a journal his father kept on his phone. Isaiah had transferred it earlier while waiting at the hospital. He clicked play. April 2nd, Brandon Cade threatened to shut down my produce stand again today. Said I don't belong here with my kind. I filed a complaint, but they tossed it out. Isaiah paused. That was the third journal entry mentioning Brandon. And this wasn't new. This was personal. Meanwhile, across town, Brandon was pacing in his apartment. He'd been temporarily suspended with pay, of course. But the moment he saw himself on the evening news, his heart dropped. They had his face, his name, his badge, even his voice yelling, "You think you people can do whatever you want?" He thought the department would cover it up. They always had. But this time, the story had legs. And Isaiah Jenkins wasn't just any soldier. He was highly decorated, respected, and known in government circles. Brandon grabbed his phone and dialed. "Hey Mark, I need help. That vet guy's coming after me." "Yeah, Jenkins. He's stirring people up, talking lawsuits." His friend on the other end was silent. "Mark, you're on your own, man," the voice replied. "Nobody wants to be caught in your mess." Click. Brandon stared at the screen in disbelief. Alone. Truly alone. The next morning, Isaiah arrived at the Brooksville Police Department, not as a civilian, but as a federal complainant backed by military legal counsel and a civil rights organization. He entered with a quiet force, flanked by attorney Monica Reed, a sharp-tongued lawyer from Atlanta, known for toppling corrupt sheriffs in 3 states. They sat across from Chief Rourke, a middle-aged white man with a weathered face and eyes that had seen too much. "I'm not here for interviews," Monica began. "We're filing a formal civil rights complaint against Officer Brandon Cade for attempted murder, use of excessive force, and racially motivated assault. We also have evidence that multiple past complaints against him were ignored." Chief Rourke sighed. "Let me be clear, I don't condone what he did." "Then fire him," Isaiah said coldly. "There's process," Rourke countered. "We're launching an internal investigation." "We already launched one," Monica said, sliding over a thick folder. "Statements, photos, medical reports, even his prior threats. Your department buried them." Rourke's face darkened. Isaiah leaned forward. "We're not asking for justice. We're enforcing it." That same day, outside the hospital, a vigil was forming. Candles, flowers, hand-painted signs. "Justice for Walter. Stop the hate. And we are not silent." Walter Jenkins remained in critical care, unconscious but stable. Doctors had stitched his chest, repaired torn muscles, and transfused blood. It was a miracle he had survived. At the vigil, Carla, the teacher who filmed the video, stood at a podium. "We can't be quiet," she said to the crowd. This wasn't an accident. This was evil. And if Isaiah hadn't arrived when he did, who knows what lies they would have told. People clapped, some cried. Reporters filmed everything. But across the street, hidden behind a parked car, Brandon watched it all from a distance. Hoodie pulled over his face, hat low, jaw clenched. He wasn't used to being the hunted, and he didn't like it. Later that evening, Monica Reed received a threatening voicemail. "You better back off," the voice hissed. "This ain't your fight. Take that soldier and go before something bad happens." She played it back for Isaiah. He didn't flinch. "Let them try," he muttered. That night, Isaiah sat again by his father's bedside. He spoke softly, telling stories of his missions, the men he'd saved, the towns he'd protected. "I've fought warlords," he said quietly, "but none as twisted as hate." Walter's eyes fluttered open. "Zay," he whispered. Isaiah bolted upright. "Pop, don't stop," Walter croaked. "Make it count." Isaiah nodded, his throat tightening. "I will, Pop, I promise." Just then, Isaiah's phone vibrated. It was a text from an anonymous number. "They're watching you. Be ready." He stared at the screen, jaw tightening. The storm wasn't over. It was about to hit harder. The next morning broke with thunderclouds stretching over Brooksville like a warning. Isaiah stood outside the courthouse, calm but alert. He wasn't alone this time. News cameras lined the front steps. Protesters held signs that read "End Racist Policing" and "Justice for Walter." Police cruisers circled, and helicopters buzzed overhead. The city was boiling, and everyone was watching. Inside, Monica Reed walked side by side with Isaiah, her black suit crisp and her eyes fire-sharp. Today wasn't just about Brandon Cade. It was about a system that had protected men like him for far too long. "This motion," Monica said, slamming a thick file onto the clerk's counter, "demands Officer Brandon Cade be arrested and indicted for attempted murder and racially motivated assault. We have eyewitnesses, video evidence, and the backing of 2 federal oversight bodies." Isaiah didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than rage. Back in the shadows of Brooksville's rundown outskirts, Brandon Cade paced in a motel room that smelled of sweat and desperation. His hands trembled as he loaded a revolver, one he'd taken from his father's drawer weeks ago. "Everybody wants to crucify me," he muttered, staring at himself in the mirror. "For what? Doing my job?" His phone vibrated. Another news notification. Army veteran files suit against cop who slashed his father. FBI joins investigation. His blood boiled. He threw the phone across the room. "Jenkins thinks he's a hero, thinks he can take me down." He looked down at the gun. Not today. That afternoon, Isaiah met with FBI agent Tara Lopez in a quiet diner outside city limits. She was lean, Latina, and had dealt with internal police corruption in 5 states. "We've been building a case," she said, "and Brandon Cade has more skeletons than a graveyard. At least 4 misconduct complaints, 2 settled silently. One involving a teenage boy who disappeared after a traffic stop." Isaiah clenched his fists. "Why hasn't he been arrested yet?" Tara lowered her voice. "Because someone's protecting him from inside. Possibly the deputy commissioner. But we're close to cracking it." Just then, Monica stormed into the diner, phone in hand. "They issued a warrant," she said. "Brandon's officially wanted, but he's vanished." Tara stood. "We'll find him." That night, rain poured like fury. Isaiah stayed at the hospital while officers kept watch. Walter had improved, but his wounds were deep, and his breathing labored. Still, his voice was stronger. "You fighting, son?" he asked through the oxygen mask. "Every day, Pop." "Good. Don't stop. Not even when it hurts." Suddenly, a nurse rushed in. "There's someone outside asking for you. Says it's urgent." Isaiah stepped into the hallway, only to hear shouting. A security guard was trying to push back a man in a rain-soaked hoodie. It was Brandon, armed. Isaiah didn't hesitate. He charged forward, knocking Brandon against the wall as the revolver clattered to the floor. "You think you're a hero?" Brandon snarled. "You ruined me." Isaiah pinned him, eyes burning. "You did that yourself." Security swarmed in. Nurses screamed. Blood dripped from Brandon's busted lip as he was dragged away. "This ain't over," he yelled. "You think this changes anything?" Isaiah stood there, breathing heavily, drenched in rain and fury. Inside, Walter watched through the glass, a faint smile on his face. Later, Isaiah and Monica sat with FBI agents, reviewing files retrieved from Brandon's home. Hidden cameras, illegally recorded footage, even a list of names, mostly black and brown men targeted during his patrol years. "This man wasn't just a racist," Monica said. "He was a predator." As dawn approached, Agent Tara delivered the news. "The deputy commissioner who buried Brandon's complaints? He's been suspended. We've opened a full federal probe." Isaiah didn't react. He just stared ahead. "Good, but I'm not done yet." Because justice for his father wasn't just about an arrest. It was about making sure no one else ever had to bleed on the sidewalk like Walter did. And Isaiah was just getting started. The courtroom was packed. Every seat was filled. News crews buzzed like wasps in the corners. Protesters and community leaders waited outside in tense silence. The moment had finally arrived. Officer Brandon Cade, in cuffs and dressed in an orange jumpsuit, sat with his lips pressed together and jaw tight. His once proud posture had collapsed into something twisted and resentful. His eyes darted toward the gallery, where Isaiah Jenkins sat beside his recovering father, Walter, in a wheelchair. Walter's chest was bandaged beneath his suit. The deep wound hadn't healed entirely, but his dignity had never been stronger. Judge Beverly Monroe, a black woman known for her no-nonsense demeanor, stepped into the courtroom and sat. Her gavel dropped sharply. "We are here for the arraignment of former Officer Brandon Cade," she announced. "Charged with attempted murder, racially aggravated assault, abuse of authority, and obstruction of justice." Brandon's lawyer stood and entered a plea, "Not guilty." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Walter leaned closer to his son. "He still thinks he's untouchable." Isaiah didn't respond. His focus was razor-sharp, but the biggest bomb hadn't dropped yet. FBI agent Tara Lopez approached the bench. "Your Honor, with the court's permission, we'd like to submit newly uncovered evidence." Judge Monroe motioned her forward. Tara placed a drive on the evidence table. "This contains body cam footage Brandon thought he deleted. It shows not only the attack on Mr. Jenkins but several other unlawful assaults, including one incident involving a minor who disappeared shortly after." The courtroom fell into a stunned silence. Additionally, she continued, we have internal communications between Officer Cade and Deputy Commissioner Rourke discussing how to cover up the attack, with intent to frame the victim. Gasps, shouting. Even Brandon's lawyer froze in disbelief. The judge banged her gavel. Order, order in the court. She stared down at Cade with disgust. Bail is denied. Trial will proceed under federal oversight. Outside the courtroom, a storm was breaking. But this time, it was one of long overdue justice. Reporters swarmed Isaiah and Walter as they exited, but they didn't speak. Not yet. They walked past the cameras, past the shouts and applause, and stopped at the steps. Isaiah looked out at the sea of faces, black, white, brown, young, old, all waiting for something deeper than a verdict. They wanted change. He raised a hand and silence fell. I didn't speak before because my father was still fighting for his life, he said, voice steady. But now that he's alive and sitting right here, I want to say something to every black parent, to every person who's ever been afraid during a traffic stop. He paused, swallowing the weight in his chest. We don't want revenge. We want dignity. We want safety. We want to stop having to explain to our children why they may not come home just for being black. Applause erupted. Walter reached up and squeezed his son's hand. In the weeks that followed, the ripple effect spread. The Brooksville Police Department was dismantled and rebuilt from the top down. A federal review board was implemented. The deputy commissioner was indicted. And most importantly, Brandon Cade was convicted on all counts. But Isaiah didn't stop there. He partnered with local leaders to start the Walter Jenkins Initiative, a movement aimed at reforming police training and increasing racial sensitivity programs across the country. It went viral. Donations poured in. Survivors spoke out. Even members of Congress took notice. Months later, Isaiah stood at a town hall meeting in Washington, D.C., holding a photo of his father, the same man who was once left bleeding on a cold sidewalk while the law looked away. We're not broken, he said to a national audience. We're rebuilding. Walter, now fully recovered, watched the broadcast from home, a tear rolling down his cheek. He whispered, "That's my boy." And just like that, the man who had nearly died became the heartbeat of something bigger. This wasn't just a story of survival, it was a reckoning, a revolution born from one brutal night, and the unyielding love between a father and son who refused to be silenced.